With a 500-kilogram bomb, I am confident that I can destroy a transport ship. If I succeed, am I allowed to come back? Immediately, the answer was given. No, never. You must die. Mr. Ugaki said nothing else. I thought, couldn't he find a few more sympathetic words?
We had seen kamikazes attack ships prior to this, but it was a sporadic thing. April 6th was the first day of concentrated mass kamikaze attacks. All hell broke loose.
I looked up and I saw 300 bogies headed our way. And I said, this is something new. We never experienced this. I just can't believe what I'm looking at. Standing on the hangar deck thinking, what the hell is going on with these people?
The American fleet around Okinawa has never experienced anything like this. From the carriers, one combat fighter unit after another scrambles to intercept the enemy. Dean Caswell is a 24-year-old pilot.
Combat air patrols were sent up there to protect the fleet, and our job was to shoot down the kamikaze. And I don't mind telling anybody, I was afraid. I couldn't get small enough behind my gun sight. I'd pee in my pants and a few other things. I don't care how well trained you are, when fear takes over, it kind of guides what you do. I was successful in shooting down planes, but they'd come back and wash my underwear.
The kamikaze attacks come in wave after wave. Either alone or in small groups, the aerial suicide bombers break formation and make their dives.
There's nothing like shooting at somebody that's coming at you that's not going to stop, you know?
They just keep coming. It's about as personal as you can get, I guess. Because you know they're trying to kill you.
We thought, what kind of nutcakes are these guys coming in? But we knew if we didn't get them, they were going to get us.
They usually come in from the sun, so you couldn't see them. By the time you spotted them, they were pretty close, maybe 30 seconds. And then we start firing at them, and if you got them, you were lucky.
The thinking behind the mass kamikaze strike is that some planes will reach their targets, and some do. On April 6, 1945, the sea is a scene of carnage. 17 American ships are struck, including 3 destroyers, 2 ammunition vessels, and a landing ship sunk. The attack on April 6th is a brutal wake-up call for the American fleet at Okinawa. Having embraced mass suicide as a weapon of war, the Japanese now take the idea of the kamikaze attack a step further. But this time, it will not come from the air. The Yamato is the largest battleship ever built. On the day of the first mass attack, she slips out of port with her escorts, heading for Okinawa. On board is 19-year-old Masanobu Kobayashi.
When we were summoned by the captain, we heard for the first time about the special attack strategy. We were told the night before to write farewell letters. I heard we were going to Okinawa.
The pride of the Japanese Navy is to launch a surprise suicide attack on the American fleet. The Yamato is to sink as many ships as possible with her huge 18-inch guns. If she becomes fatally damaged, the orders are to beach the ship and continue firing. Any surviving crew members are to reinforce the Japanese troops on land and fight to the death. There are no volunteers for this mission. All 3,302 men on board have no choice.
Once you give your life to your country, you have to be resolved about it.
But unknown to the Japanese, U.S. submarines and planes have spotted the attack force.
They announced that the Japanese fleet was attempting to reach Okinawa to wreak havoc on the island. We would meet them somewhere and put them under attack. And the Yamato at that time was the largest battleship afloat, 80,000 tons. It was there, invincible, you know? So we were all excited to get going on it. And we went about, I think, an hour and a half before we spotted the fleet.
As soon as I sat at the guns, the first wave came. The gunner was killed immediately, so I became the gunner.
Some 400 American aircraft are ordered to attack the Japanese fleet. For some, it's a chance to avenge Pearl Harbor. Fighters and bombers draw fire from the enemy, enabling torpedo bombers to sweep in over the sea.
We went in close, dropped the torpedo, and right at the moment we dropped it, we got hit. A large explosion rocked the plane.
The torpedoes came in, and we were hit on the left side.
The Yamato is struck by 11 torpedoes and at least 8 armor-piercing bombs. After 3 punishing waves of attack, she's crippled, on fire, and starting to capsize. A moment later, it's all over.
Fires from the torpedo damage reached the ammunition store, and it exploded. I was blown away by the blast. My body suddenly felt light, got lifted. And then my mother's face flashed across my mind. My mother said, "What happened, Masanobu?" I regained consciousness, and I was saved.
The last ships of the Japanese Navy are destroyed before they even reach their targets. The loss of life is staggering. 4,250 Japanese officers and men die. Of the 3,300 on the Yamato, only 269 are saved.
Miracle? Well, yes, a miracle. Oh, I was very lucky.
The American air crews return to the fleet. Ed Duffy's plane is damaged, but he makes it back to the USS Bunker Hill.
I never saw the actual sinking, but it felt pretty good to know that you had knocked it out, you know. I don't care how big it is. We knew that it was going to sink.
The damage inflicted by the mass air attack at Okinawa on April 6th forces the Allied High Command to reevaluate how to protect the fleet from the onslaught of kamikazes. The strategy developed is to put out a protective ring of destroyers. They're called radar picket stations. The plan is for the destroyers to give advanced radar warning of incoming aircraft. This will allow combat fighter units to scramble from the carriers to intercept them. The only drawback is that the outlying destroyers are exposed and vulnerable.
I saw on the radar sort of a circular arc way out at the end of the screen, but quite broad. If there were only one aircraft there, you would see a little dot there. But looking at this thing, it was clear that there was a huge raid coming in.
They were out there all around us, first attack, they come in 2 or 3 of them. And we shot 2 of them down and the other one away. And then they come in again.
And then, all of a sudden, there was this huge bang.
That's the last I remember, because I was thrown overboard.
Obviously, we'd been hit, but I didn't know where. I just knew that I was still standing. All the power was on. The radars were still running.
The mass air raid is only a precursor to a new plan. Ugaki has a surprise in store. Minutes later, something appears on the radar that Roy Anderson has never seen before.
This time, when you looked at how the little plots were going along, you realized this thing was coming in much, much faster. Couldn't figure that out at all, but we knew that we had trouble.
While the American fighters are distracted by the kamikazes, Commander Ugaki sends in a bomber carrying its deadly cargo. Now streaking towards Roy's ship is the manned rocket missile, the Oka.
It was like somebody hitting the deck with 1,000 sledgehammers all at once. This enormous bang, it just lifted me right off my feet.
And I was in the water, and I turned around after I come to, and I looked back and I seen the ship going down. It was just split right in the middle, and it was up like that.
I left the bilge keel and slid down the hull of the ship into the water. Now this for me was a problem because they had barnacles all over it, and I lost the seat of my pants and a little bit of my seat, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get the hell out of there.
The Manert El Abeli is hit by the first Oka seen launched by U.S. forces. The ship sinks in just 3 minutes. 73 men die.
It's just traumatic, you know. You see your buddies one day and 10 minutes later they're gone, you know. We lost a lot of good buddies. Yep.
In April, picket destroyers like the Manert El Abeli suffer heavy losses. This is the price the Allies pay to protect the fleet. And the price grows more costly with each day as the Japanese hold out on Okinawa. Against overwhelming odds, their forces there show no signs of giving ground.
The Japanese put up a tremendous defense on Okinawa. It was up close and personal. And they were ready for us. We were always moving, we were always assaulting. Chasing Japs into caves and trying to get them out. But the Japanese didn't know how to lose. They didn't know how to surrender. They were always digging in and trying to repulse us. I participated in the assault on Sugarloaf Hill, and that was a disaster. Our platoon leader was killed. A number of men were killed and wounded.
The battle for Okinawa drags on much longer than the Americans expect. While the Allied fleet is trapped supporting its troops, Commander Ugaki launches more waves of attack. The mass kamikaze strikes are having an effect. It's now a battle of minds as well as one of men and machines.
We knew they were going to try to bleed us with this kamikaze thing. It was stressful and psychological.
We didn't understand the mindset of a kamikaze, but it was very effective and very demoralizing.
You couldn't sleep because day and night they were coming, which was very nerve-wracking.
It was just a period of getting up in the morning, fighting all day, going to bed at night and getting up the next morning and doing the same thing.
Was I frightened? Yes, I suppose I was in a way. It seemed so unreal and unnatural for people to be throwing themselves in their airplanes directly at you. Had they been trying to torpedo us or bomb us, then you'd have looked upon it in a slightly different way. But this was very personal. You know, you felt that you were the objective of the kamikaze.
It isn't how the British crews planned to celebrate the news of victory in Europe.
We didn't feel like celebrating, far from it, far from it. And I have to say, when we got back home, some 6 months later, it was quite a shock to find that people just didn't know that the British Pacific Fleet had ever existed.
Sounded like a bad landing on the flight deck, but no, it was more than that.
Shortly after 10 a.m., 2 kamikazes managed to evade radar detection by following Allied fighters returning to the USS Bunker Hill.
I saw the planes go into the Bunker Hill. It was thick, black, oily smoke. She was damaged pretty badly.
The 2 suicide bombers ignite aviation fuel on the deck and hangar deck. A U.S. Navy cameraman captures the chaos.
I went up to the hangar deck, and it was in disarray and smoke, and there was no place to stand to protect yourself.
The carrier's huge ventilation system begins to suck the choking fumes down into the decks below, turning them into death traps to any man without a gas mask.
The officers' mess was 2 decks below the hangar deck, so we were trapped. The flight deck was full of airplanes, which produced oil smoke, and all that was taken down into the bowels of the ship. We couldn't even see each other, it was so black. We got on our hands and knees and crawled to the doorway. We couldn't breathe. So I took out my gas mask, and so did my friend. We put the gas mask on. That saved our lives. By the time we got to the hallway, they were so full of bodies that we had to crawl on top of the bodies to get to a ladder that would go up to the hangar deck. Just the 2 of us got out, the rest of them all stayed down there. Anyone below decks just didn't make it.
By late afternoon, it's obvious that the crippled carrier will have to retire. The flagship of the fleet is knocked out of the war. Almost 400 of her crew members are dead. The loss of the ship and so many men sends shockwaves through the Allies.